Dust to dust is an Old Testament doctrine. It is no longer applicable to us today. And here is why. Hello. My name is Michael So. Welcome to www.immortals.today. It is here where immortals hide no more. I hope you will enjoy receiving new revelation that will set you free from the fear of death that we were once subjected to. The slides that you are going to see today are founded in base 1 Hebrew 2:15, and deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. I trust that you will enjoy the message that follows. How, where, and when did this dust to dust doctrine come about? The Old Testament has only 3 Bible verses that carries this doctrine of dust to dust. First we have Genesis 3:18, "Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field." Then we have Genesis 18:27, "And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes." And finally we also have the same in Job 30:19, "He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes." These 3 Bible verses are very clear. All 3 verses reinforce the doctrine of dust to dust. There is no two-way about this. 3 numerically represents completion. And when it is completed, something anew will be ushered in. The completed timeline is Adam, and the new timeline user in is Jesus. The later is of greater significance and completeness than the earlier. We can see these magnified when we look at some examples of the occurrence of the numeric number 3, in relation to Jesus in the New Testament. Jesus was tempted 3 times in the desert by Satan. After the completion of the temptation, Jesus went on to start his ministry. 3 disciples failed to stay awake 3 times in the Garden of Gethsemane. What Peter, James, and John failed to keep awake and pray did not stop Jesus from going forward to the cross to do the great finishing. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And all 3 denials did not stop Jesus from blessing Peter with a big catch of fish and cooked a hot breakfast meal for Peter. 3 disastrous verses in the Old Testament that pronounce us to return to dust did not repeat itself in the New Testament. But instead Jesus showed the way. His body did not end as dust. This is despite that he is killed, he is dead for 3 days, his body is badly beaten up, bleed out badly, and his body is mutilated by claws, whip, thorns, and nails. Dust to dust is not found in the New Testament. However, dust is mentioned 7 times in the New Testament. When we lay all the 7 verses down, in sequence to the books in the Bible, beginning with Matthew and ending with Revelation, we will see a beautiful revelation unfold. First 5 occurrence of the word dust, we are told to shake off the dust from our body. This the message that Jesus wants us to drive into our heart. Dust to dust doctrine no longer applies. It is by grace, represented by 5, that we are to drop the dust to dust doctrine by shaking it off from our body. Have nothing to do with this doctrine anymore. The next 2 verses on dust warn us that we will mourn with dust on our face. Multiply 5 with 2 with get 10, a numeric number that reminds us of the laws. Jesus has replaced the laws. He has already phased the laws out. Colossians 2:14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. If we fail to heed this warning to dust off the dust doctrine, we will end up in regret with dust on our face regulated onto us by the laws from the Old Testament covenant. We will have ashes on our face as we mourn for the death. Adam introduced death and has completed its reign when Jesus died at the cross. 3 signify the completion of the dust to dust doctrine. The end of dust to dust doctrine means the end of the sting of death. The first 3 Bible verses on dust in the Old Testament are neutralized and repealed by a new covenant, as proclaimed in Hebrews 8:8. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It is clear, when a new covenant is drawn out, you contract under a new covenant and render the old covenant null and void. This is reinforced in Hebrews 8:13 in that he saith, A new covenant, he hath made the first hold. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. We can put to the test whether these Old Testament verses are repealed by looking to see if the same ideas are found again in the New Testament. Will this old doctrine take the shape of a curse again, returning man to dust and ashes in the New Testament? Or will they be glaringly absent? The dust doctrine don't seem to appear as a curse anymore. There is no such doctrine anymore in the New Testament. But instead we have Jesus who did died but resurrected. He refused to turn into dust. What does it mean to have the dust to dust doctrine repealed? What does it mean when one says that the dust to dust doctrine is no longer applicable in our timeline? Hebrew 2:15 says, "And deliver them who through fear of death, were all their lifetime subject to bondage." We are all under the bondage of fear of death. We can only be delivered totally if death is no more. We are not delivered if we have to go through and experience death. Think of this for a moment. Can we have our salvation if we are not saved? Can we experience salvation if we do not believe in Jesus? Can we have salvation if we do not accept Jesus as our Savior? Believe in Jesus or accept Jesus as our Savior is a verb. Likewise, believing that Jesus destroyed death is a verb. It is something that you need to do on your part. It is the same line of thought here. We will not be under the bondage of death if death no longer exists. One must occur first, before the next can kick sin. Here, death must be destroyed before we can no longer be under the bondage of fear of death. We must believe that Jesus destroyed death before we can be totally freed from the bondage of death, and you have already seen in the earlier slides how death is destroyed by Jesus' resurrected body. Thank you for taking your precious time to learn about immortality. Hope you have benefited from this presentation. If you did benefited from this presentation, please share this presentation with your loved one. Forward to them and encourage them to be immortal. You can also get my book title, Immortality, Everlasting Life, the Ultimate Gift from Jesus, and learn new revelation from over 300 Bible verses on immortality. It is now available in Amazon.com.